Hello and welcome to this case study review of the Swamp website, a website that we recently took on at Jupiter in the Draft and we're quite proud of, so I wanted to do a case study, talk to you about the technology, talk to you about the client, what they do, and just give you an indication of the sort of work we took on. If you don't know me, my name's Samuel Gregory. I'm owner and founder of Jupiter in the Draft. I have another channel where we talk about the technology side of things. I want to touch on a little bit of that in this episode. If you want to skip forward to that stuff and just learn about the tech side, I'll put timestamps basically in the thing. But what I'm going to approach first is talk about Swamp, talk about the client, talk about the challenges and what we undertook, and then we'll get into the tech side.
So Swamp are an experiential, immersive studio. They serve three purposes. They do their own shows, they do their own live shows, which they call Swamp Originals. They have production services where they can assist you in your live experiences, providing production elements, directorship, producing, or any sort of element where you need support. In addition, they'll provide those services. And then, of course, they'll work on other people's productions and produce other people's productions in entirety. But this whole project came about because Swamp used to be called Swamp Motel, and they were going through a huge, whole exciting rebrand, and they wanted something bold, flashy, bombastic, and just something that really makes a splash in the industry. And they brought to us the design. They had the design. They'd been working with a designer on that one already. They wanted just to bring that to life with flourishes of interactions. They were traditionally on a WordPress website, which was, as most websites get to, whether on WordPress or Webflow, you start adding stuff and build stuff, and it just becomes very bloated. It's a bloated website. WordPress is not unique in that aspect. It's just as requirements change, you should then step back and see, like, what are our current use cases? Now that we've found our feet, now that we've discovered who we are, what we offer, and all the rest of it, what do we need and what do we need to get rid of on our current website? And so that was a case of just sitting down with both the tech side, Leo, and Clement, the team, who was current CEO at the time, just talking about what their goals were, what they were trying to achieve. And that way I was able to fully work with them and onboard me to the goal of the project. That enabled us to really make decisions going forward on whether certain calls would impact them. Me bringing my experience of live productions to the table and knowing what they want to achieve, proposing that they introduce stars and things like that to the website. So running those strategic workshops in the beginning really help us move forward as a team together rather than just be acting as a separate partner. So that was a really fun experience, and it's enjoyable for me and the team to feel part of that journey rather than, again, just being an outside vendor. I was interested in bringing WordPress to it because they wanted control of the design and various aspects like that. With WordPress, you can use tools like Pinegrow, Bricks Builder, but ultimately we went down a Webflow route for a simpler experience. And because I have another channel on Webflow, I talk about Webflow quite a lot. It was a perfect sort of amalgamation of, we love working with immersive and experiential companies, and also, I'm an expert in Webflow. I talk a lot about Webflow, so it's a tool that we enjoy using.
Some of the challenges we faced a big one was that we didn't have the content inside of the design before we took on the website. And when you want to move fast, it's hard to balance that of like, well, the content isn't there. You came to find out that once the content came in, that fundamentally changed a lot of the website and what should and shouldn't be shown on it. So not having the content there was a big hurdle for us in really moving forward with the website, because you then constantly have it in the back of your mind that, well, this could change or something could change. And also project management was a big challenge for us because it was unclear where the direction was coming from, where the buck stopped with certain things, and who was really organizing and rallying up the team. And that's inspired me really to bring on a project manager from our side of things to make sure that we're communicative with what we're doing and how we're going about it, and you know, goals and timelines and what we need and things like that.
There were limitations that Webflow brought. Webflow isn't perfect. Certainly around nesting CMS collections or databases and having them work well together, or there are physical limitations on those that you tend to see solutions for, but we opted not to. We were advised not to go through those things because it would have an impact on the SEO stuff. Bit unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes with Webflow. You really need to look at the entirety of the website before taking on to know where the limitations will impact you.
Other than that, I found it was a very smooth website project that we got started, we got going very, very quickly. Our philosophy is get 80% of the way there and figure out the nitty-gritty later on, because the nitty-gritty, the last 20% is the real stuff that causes problems. And if at the very least that 80% you have a functioning website that, yes, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, it might have a little bug here or there, you're at least able to fall back on that, and you get to that point very, very quickly. I actually like to get it in the first 20% of the project, and that's just sort of our philosophy on things. Documentation was a very important aspect to this, because whilst you can dip in and learn Webflow and change things in Webflow, there are going to be some nuances that have gone on during the development process, such as showing and hiding menus, how to style something that's hidden on the page that pops in like a popover or something like that. So using Loom and Screen Studio, we produced a series of documentation and shared that with the clients. So if they get stuck or they need to learn something, then they can just reference that documentation and do it themselves and understand the thought process that went behind changing a menu item or something like that. So we always provide documentation for our clients on how to edit and use their website. An interesting challenge that we see time and time again, which is no problem because we're quite happy to assist in this sort of stuff, is the articulation of interactions and animations. So where a designer or an interaction designer has seen something they really like and they reference it and send it over. There's so much that we can infer from that. There's inertia, there's what's the mouse movement doing? Is it a click and drag? What is actually happening here? Because everyone's looking at a different part of the interactions. And that's really a fun and interesting challenge to face. It takes a bit of a phone call, a bit of just an expression of how we understand the animation. What is it that we're looking at? And then just working through that, and then we come up with something. And then what excites us is that we're able to bring our own experience to the table then and improve on that animation or make it better based on what we feel like the users are going to use it for and what suits well for the web, basically. And also for the brand image. You know, animations need to feel cohesive with the branding. So having a fluid animation on a very blocky website, to me, certainly sounds a bit counterintuitive. They don't work well together. Not always, but it's just, you know, it's just one of those things. So that's just something that a challenge that we quite welcome and something we see time and time again. Overall, this was a really great project and a really fun team to work with. Now, let's get on with the technical stuff. As you land on swampexperience.com, obviously there's nothing too magical going on here. It's just a big, bold hero video, just to showcase Swamp's work. I guess the thing to note is that this infinite scroller, this is something I'm working on at the moment, which is a reusable bunch of components, libraries, and things that we encounter quite often on our Webflow websites, and infinite scrollers are one such thing of those. So we've written some code which we feel like is performant and flexible, and we're using it here just to bind an infinite scroller. We're still working on it. It's still not been released yet. Hoping to release that when we feel like we have something and we've really put it through its paces. So look forward to something like that. This was something quite fun here, where I think it was called Tilt Shift, basically trying to imitate a 3D perspective on mouse over. Now, there were some libraries that were getting suggested to me and stuff like that. Again, I'm not a massive fan of using libraries unless I feel like it's a tremendous amount of work and thought that goes into it. In this instance, it really didn't feel like there was a tremendous amount of thought and whatever that goes into it. So we rolled our own. I think there was an article that I followed. We just amended that and sort of had our own thing going on. I'll leave a link to that article down below. But these were quite nice, just to kind of, again, give that exaggerated, expressive, bold look and feel that they were going for. So this was quite cool. And the colors themselves indicate areas of the website, and you'll see these carry through to sort of brand the production services, the Swamp Originals, and the brand experiences. So you'll see that through the website. Once again, this was an infinite carousel, which again, we rolled our own sort of thing. It's not a hard thing to do. And you saw that animate in here. So we're using GSAP because it gives us the ultimate flexibility to really do what we want with. Originally, this was going to be a pinned scroller that as you scroll down, it sort of navigated across. We weren't really happy with the result. So now it's just kind of a sideways scroller. But if I refresh that, you'll see how I quite like how it animates in. And it just gives a bit more character. Did also forget to say that you could see the Swamp logo animate in as you kind of get past the first little kind of scroll area of that. That was something we added. A lot of these animations and touches is something we brought to the table with some guidance and direction from the designer. So, and then we get into the blog post here. Again, pretty standard. Nothing really happens with these. They go into a sideways scroller and smaller breakpoints. Pretty straightforward. You want this page to be performant. You want it to wow. It's a careful balance between adding loads of animation, loads of interactions, and having something that still performs well. SEO is always a huge issue when it comes to marketing websites, and this was no exception. So let's do all the high-level pages, and then we'll dig into a bit further then. So about us, this was quite a fun page to do. This went through a few iterations, actually. We landed on basically a combination of the talking about the company and the team page. Previously, these were going to be a separate thing. They kind of come in as you scroll down the page you saw, and then you've got a gentle little animation here that pops in and the image zooms out. Once again, we brought those to the table with some guidance from the designer, having this sort of colored background, and we rotate through those colored backgrounds. Not clickable yet or anything like that, but simple page and sort of served its purpose. And then the work page was again something we could have used a separate library for, and that is this filtering that happens. So you can filter the type of work that they've done on all their case studies. And once again, this was something we could write ourselves, and this is probably something that's going to make it into the flow state libraries that I spoke about earlier. But it was very simple, just able to filter, and then you can reset that filter and then bring them all in. So, and then of course you can click through to the different case studies. Contact button is just a simple scroll down to the contact, because this is on every single page. Again, enhancing that kind of conversion rate, making sure that there's always a way to contact Swamp on every single page. So let's go back to the home page and dig in where we can get to these more branded experience. Oh, there we go, branded experiences. So if I click learn more, you see the page has a red feel to it. They still wanted the Swamp yellow, but the base styling, the background of the page, the header, various sort of elements here, all very much red. And this was using a base brand subpage styling variable, which was set by default yellow. So wherever we used that was yellow. And then I think there was a class added to the top of every page that just colored basically the page. It redefines subpage color here. So that was something we could really play with. It's worth saying that this was before the custom attributes that got released recently. So there's a lot of styles in the back end. This looks yellow because in the back end, we can't change things and do things. But I believe with custom properties now, we don't have to move a lot of the interesting CSS into the page level CSS or the page level custom code. Now we can start to see all this stuff in the browser with custom properties. It's just a shame that that came out just a little bit too late, but never mind. But yeah, you can see the infinite scroller here. There's a subtle parallax. You can see the people here and the text kind of going behind the people. This was using a fabulous tutorial by Timothy Ricks, where essentially your scroll detector is the full size of the page, and you're detecting where that invisible scroll detector is on the page basically, and then moving sub elements with that. Really, really nice tutorial. I'll leave a link to that below. Just a little bit on the architecture of the CMS. I won't go into it here because I just don't want to touch the back end of this website in case I mess something up. I'll show some screenshots of the breakdown of the CMS, but basically you've got case studies which can link to one of three types of case studies, which as you saw on the homepage, it's brand experiences, content experiences, production services, and Swamp Originals. You also have awards, which is separate because I want to manipulate and change what awards get displayed throughout the website. Quotes as well are a separate collection because, again, we want to use those throughout the website, and they're all interlinked. Basically, you have a selection of all your quotes and you can apply those to a case study. So you can just, it's a multi-reference field that you can provide those. I love this idea of separate databases. Our thought process is, if you're going to use a collection on multiple pages, then break it out into its own CMS or collection, sorry. So for instance, awards, we want to apply awards to the shows or to the experiences, but we also want to show them on other pages. So again, we broke that out into its own collection, and then each case study can just have a multi-reference field selecting which awards apply to the case study itself. So, and then we have a featured case study per brand experience. So again, this is a content type. Brand experience is one of the content types, and you can choose a collection, or sorry, you can choose a case study that is to be featured on the homepage. And again, this is the data from that show, the logo, and all the rest of it. You saw these numbers come in, roll in. Again, that was something we wrote because it's very simple to do. We use GSAP to do it, but we didn't use it like another library. We didn't add another library to achieve all of the interactions and things like that. Once again, infinite scroller. You've got the case studies once again here, and then the quotes. And this is an example of where you've got quotes that don't necessarily apply to shows, but you want to show them on the home pages of these sort of landing pages. Brand experience, Swamp Originals, and production services. So we'll go into production services just to show you that it's pretty much the same sort of thing. You've got the hero header there, and this, maybe you saw that navigate in, but you've got a kind of swipe in there, a bunch of content and things like that. So just the same sort of stuff. Now we get into Swamp Originals. This was a challenging one, this sort of, we call it the DVD bookcase, and we weren't quite sure how this was meant to animate and whatever. So we did the best we could, given that there was I think WebBay has done a great tutorial on a slider that kind of moves around recently. The issue with that is that it's limited to, you have to set the number of shows and all the rest, you have to set the number of slides, and it's all fixed values, whereas they want to be able to just say a show that they've done is a Swamp Original, and this will forever grow. And you can see that it works fairly well. The mobile version is just the same sort of thing, but it vertically stacks. The only thing I don't like is just a bit of black here that expands at a different rate to the width of the overall cover art, I guess is the thing to call it. So, but again, fairly simple page where you can just go in and view the work. So if we go into the case studies here, you can see that this case study in itself is blue, leaning into that sub-page color thing. So all Swamp Originals will have this blue background. And we have the sideways scrolling gallery here. I think this was a key learning for the website, actually, is that the content wasn't ready for quite a while, and the design was created to lorem ipsum. And this is the issue, I guess, of creating, accepting a design or working with the design of lorem ipsum, that when it came to actually writing the content, the Swamp figured out that actually there's some designs or some elements of the page that are unusable, quite frankly, because they didn't have something to put in there. So what seems like now, looking back at it, is quite a short page. There's more to this behind the scenes that they can add as the content grows, but this is a clear case of lorem ipsum copy, really painting a picture that wasn't achievable or not playing around enough with the content. And it happens, it's not a huge deal. It just means you have to cull areas of the page, and that's just the way it goes, unfortunately. So if there's anything that you want to know, then do leave them down in the comments. If you're interested in working with us to build your next experiential website, then don't hesitate to reach out. We're always looking for great new clients to build really interesting websites with. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.